I am going to speak about Australia Road, but to begin with, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about Hammersmith Fulham, although I think most of that's been already done by Nicola, so I'll race through that. I'm going to speak briefly about Kenmont Rain Gardens, which is a small SUD scheme which we've developed recently and finished. I will indulge you all with a bit of Australia Road, and then speak just briefly about the challenges of incorporating SUDs into these sort of neighbourhood improvement schemes. That's where Hammersmith Fulham is, in a London borough. Few facts about it. We do have 3 football teams. Let's say about those. We have 3 lost rivers. We know where they are. We have found them. We have 8 kilometres of Thames floodwall, and a majority of our borough drains to a combined sewer network, which is actually part of the old Counters Creek. I'll just put this up, basically just show you how urban it is. So on the right-hand side, you can see, left-hand side from where I think, you can see that it's fairly well developed. We don't have quite the green open spaces of Enfield, although, well, actually, the Friends of Wormhead Scrubs would tell you not to touch that with a barge pole. But you can also see here, it's fairly flat. The north of the borough is fairly elevated, but pretty much flat down towards the Thames there. Also, I thought I'd quickly show, and thank you ESI for the mapping on the left-hand side. That's actually from their groundwater, the risk of groundwater intrusion. You can see there is potential groundwater risks towards the river. The underlying geology of Hammersmith Fulham is, we've got London clay under there. As everyone knows, London, you can't infiltrate. Well, actually you can. We've got Kempton Park gravels and a bit of Langley silt member. So I'm afraid developers try harder. Tidal flood risk. Now this is the standard EA flood map that you'll receive. It says that 60% of our borough is at risk of flooding. It obviously negates the fact that we have the tidal barrier and we've got large flood defences along there. So although that helps, with regards to flooding, we obviously still do have a risk of breach. I know that's a rather awful graphic there, but that's, I guess, what I concentrate on is the risk of inundation from breach. But most importantly, surface water at the minute. We have huge areas of Hammersmith Fulham which is at risk of inundation during surface water. In fact, you'll recognise, Mark, down in there, we do actually have Queen Caroline Estate down there. That's our latest mapping from our surface water management plan. We also have those wonderful events where you have no idea where it's going to flood, all to do with utility pipes bursting. And I guess what I'm trying to say is you can plan for defending against flooding, but ultimately there's some instances where it's just going to happen. But what we need to do is try and implement as many SUDs as we can to try and reduce the impact on the network. We have Thames Tideway Tunnel. I'm not going to speak about that, otherwise I might get myself in trouble. But I thought I'd just point out, so we have Thames Tideway Tunnel within the borough. Hammersmith Fulham are over there on the left-hand side. We also have the Counters Creek Storm Relief Sewer, which hopefully most people know about by now, but this is to try and help alleviate flooding within the Counters Creek catchment. It's providing additional capacity within the sewer network. However, that is for now. That's not future-proofing. We have an additional 50,000 residents that are about to form part of Old Oak Common in Park Royal. That doesn't account for that. That doesn't account for any more urbanisation of the borough. So that helps now. That's not going to future-proof. So what we need to do is start implementing a few more SUD schemes. I've only been at Hammersmith Fulham for the last 18 months, and what we're trying to do is really push SUDs onto the agenda, and we're getting the political support to do so. I've shown here some of the schemes that we've done in the last 12 months. The ones that are in green are ones that are still in progress, and the ones in blue are all but complete. I am going to concentrate first of all on Kenmont Gardens, which is right at the top of the borough. I'd say the residents up here would say we forget about them because they're so hard to get to from where we are right down in the south. But in this instance, we were undertaking a neighbourhood improvement scheme and looking at potential opportunities to improve the area. Now, I think pretty much everywhere in London has these areas which effectively been bollarded off for one reason or another, and they've just become dead space, highly just impermeable. I think you can see in the bottom picture actually that road is completely cordoned off. It's dead end and on both sides, and this area was suffering from exceeding amounts of fly tipping, but also complaints of antisocial behaviour. So there was something that we needed to do there. The highways engineers were speaking about doing some improvement works, and luckily I overheard it and said, "Do you want to do some suds?" This is right at the top of the catchment, and so I see, although there isn't really a risk of, there's not too much flooding that occurs down here at the present time, but this is more about providing capacity within the network moving down. So although it's hard to sell the whole flooding locally to them, as they tell me, well, I've never seen it flood here before, it's the ability to actually provide that capacity within the network. Sorry, just one second. So in February 2014, we developed 3 concepts and placed those out for public consultation. They were then later developed into a preferred option, which we worked with various stakeholders to develop. So the key stakeholders in this instance were the Residents Association, the local primary school, and various utility companies who had their assets within that area. We also then undertook some work with the Residents Association and primary school to develop some interesting tiles to implement. We wanted them to have some ownership, to create kind of a sense of it's their space, and it was something that they came up with that they'd like to do. We thought, well, brilliant, let's do it. So these were the 3 options. You'll see actually it gets progressively more green as the options go on, and funnily enough it was option 3 they chose, as they wanted additional greening to the area, and they also liked the idea of suds, which was brilliant news to our eyes. So once again, another picture today where actually it looks quite similar to this. This was what was drawn up at the beginning, and actually it's fairly similar to what ended up being created. I will just briefly talk about how it works. There's a fair bit of excavation that's gone on. There's what are known as strata cells underneath. They aren't just permavoids, they actually are filled with soil. They provide the structural loading for the soil so that effectively you're not compacting it. So there's a void ratio within that soil. Provides great environment for the trees to grow, but also provides a certain amount of attenuation. These are all interlinked with piped connections, and then is a controlled flow to the sewer. There wasn't an ability in this area to infiltrate, and so we are actually we're still going to the sewer, but we're controlling it to greenfield runoff rates up to the 1 in 10, and then heavily reduced runoff rate, so it's 50% lower than existing for up to 100 years plus climate change. And there's obviously exceedance paths noted. You see there's an orange oval. That's where ponding will occur from 1 in 10 year and above. It's actually controlled in that area. And it was kind of rather than excavating down even further, and actually there were issues with excavating further associated with existing utilities. We actually wanted to bring water to the surface to actually show the public, well, rather than just ignoring the fact and where the rain goes, let's actually prove to them where, if it is managed here, we are managing it, but it actually forms a small puddle. Now, that actually doesn't block any routes through, and it's fairly well defined on the paving. And we thought keep it in mind, the fact that surface water is still being managed here. Rather than out of sight, out of mind, we thought it would be a good idea to keep it on the surface. So, construction. I've just put in a couple of photos here with regards to, so these are the strata cells. They're then filled with soil underneath as I'm sending out the areas. And these are some of the tiles that are created. Now, Paul, I'm afraid I did put in, yes, it's my favourite quote on one of the tiles. And for the life of me, I thought it was from a 7-year-old in Hammersmith, Fulham, and I was so proud. I was thinking, I'm signing this kid up. But it turns out actually it's quite a well-known Buddhist phrase. So Anyway, I like it, but it was on one of the tiles. They were involved in creating all these tiles that go around the ring. We also got them involved in a community planting day where students were selected to help plant, and also members of the local community involved in planting. And there's me trying to tell them how to plant. Yes. So here we are. We actually created these pockets. You'll see here there's actually, they look like effectively small rings there. Rather than having open planting constantly, we actually have a resin-bound aggregate, permeable aggregate around, and then planting in small pots effectively. The reason being that we also didn't want to create missiles for smashing windows, and there was concern of dog fouling in the area. So this meant we could still have that permeable surface, still have the planting, but actually keep it refined to specific pockets. And it's worked quite well actually. And here are some of the photos of Kenmont Gardens. So we provided seating, and actually I think this is the only time, I don't know why I put the photos up of people not sitting there, but most of the time there are people sat there. And actually this cat just wanted to be in the photos at all possible times. It's provided an area. The school is on the left-hand side photo. You can see the school straight ahead of us. That's the local primary school there. And parents often just sit there, before picking up their children or afterwards, and it's become a bit of a congregation area, which is great. Certainly better than the people that were previously utilising the space. And we tried to do this on all our things, is put up educational signage. And this for us is about educating the public as to what is actually underground. Quite often you'll find that if you don't tell them it's suds, then they wouldn't know. And that's good in a way. If we've done our work and they don't know about all the intricate details underneath them, well, I suppose we've succeeded in many ways. But we wanted to make sure that they were aware of everything that was going on and what this whole scheme was about. So we produced this sign, which is up. It's actually produced by Green Blue Urban, so thank you, guys. And we also attended various assemblies to teach the kids about what it was they were doing. So a bit of before and after shots. They're a bit from afar, but you can see it's a slight improvement, hopefully. The trees are still ready to bloom. They're fairly sparse in their leafage, and I'm looking at these photos now going, it doesn't look like a great deal of difference, but trust me, it is. And we got some quotes here which I won't read through, but ostensibly both the primary school and the residents association are very keen, and actually every time we've been there, people have come out and commented on how much they like it. There are maybe a slight issue at the minute with regards to the amount of litter. Basically, we've undersized the bin. We weren't expecting quite so many people to use that area, and so now the bins are getting filled up quicker than we assumed. So actually, they're being replaced with a larger bin, and it's being added to the list of, can we please empty these a little bit quicker? Now I shall go on to Australia Road, if I may, and I do apologise if you've been spoken to death about, but Australia Road. Okay. The straight ahead of us is the White City estate, which suffers from a fair bit of economic and social deprivation. On the left-hand side, we have the 2014 award-winning Playground of the Year, no less. And on the right-hand side, we have the Randolph Beresford Early Years Centre. At the same time as we were looking at this area, we had also undertaken some mapping of surface water, and this turned out to be an area where we had issues with regards to flooding surface water, and also leading to quite severe flooding down towards Shepherd's Bush. So it said suds to us. So in March to June of 2013, we did a rather large neighbourhood-wide consultation. And at this point, we were just looking at potential opportunities within the area, the whole of the area around White City. And it was actually the headmaster of the Randolph Beresford Early Years Centre who came to us and said, we've got our schools on one side of the road, playgrounds on the other. We don't really like our kids running across the road, and actually it seems there's not really a linkage between the two. What do you say to pedestrianising that street? Now, normally, I think the majority of highways would say, no, that's far too much like hard work. But actually, it made sense. And also, they were asking for an event space, and they wanted some greening to the area and make it slightly safer. So, and rumour has it, now I wasn't there at the time, but rumour has it he did even drop in the word suds. And so we went, who knows suds? So we asked Robert Bray Associates and McCloy Consulting to come aboard and to develop us a concept, which they did. And we presented this at a public meeting in February 2014 and put that out for public consultation. Whilst out for public consultation, it received quite a few responses. Every single one of them seemed to be positive with regards to the SUDS elements. There were certain things that they wanted in there. And I'll just, let me show you, this was the concept plan. But it was trying to take to the next level. Basically, what could we do with SUDS, the maximum we could try and achieve. I think we've achieved the majority of it. There are certain areas that we didn't touch. Can't obviously touch the award-winning playground, so we left that to the north. And the area around the substation, in fact, UKPM were quite accepting of the idea of a green roof and fencing around it. Unfortunately, they do have a fair bit of Japanese knotweed within that area. Although they're managing it, we thought putting up a green screen with the potential for a Japanese knotweed to take down, that we'll leave that for a bit. But it is being managed, but not removed. And so this is the general arrangement as is. So permeable paving along the whole stretch of the road. It's 130 metres long. We are disconnecting the downpipes from the neighbouring buildings and bringing them across into a series of rain gardens and bioretention basins. So let me show you. This is, you see, it's quite nice having the landscape architect in the room actually developed it. And it looks very pretty. I like that. So this is actually, let me tell you about this wiggly wall. Now, for some of my colleagues, the wiggly wall is the bane of their life. But it was brought about basically if I were to go back, and I do apologise to do this, but on the right-hand side, you can see there's this very small wall outside the front of the school. Now, whilst attending the site for the first time, we were informed that we would quite like to keep the wall, which was an odd request, but okay. The basis being that kids have been using it for generations, as it was put to us, to use it as a balancing beam. And sure enough, kids do actually use it as a balancing beam. In fact, I think as they said it, several kids jumped up and started using it. So there was a desire to try and keep a structure of that ilk there, which is why we've made it a little bit funner. So it's actually a wiggly wall balancing beam through a bioretention basin. Now we couldn't quite achieve the blue, despite going out to various quarries and trying to find the right material. But hopefully what we've put in place, actually, I think it looks pretty smart. We also created an events plaza. Now there was a need for a new event space. And unfortunately, I haven't got the quote today, but when speaking to our events manager, they believe actually this is the best event space that we have with regards to provisions. So we've got electrical supply, we've got 2 kiosks on either side for electrical supplies and water supplies for events to take place there. We've also got CCTV in the area. I guess I should probably start talking about the performance of this. So rather than your generic, restricting it to 50% of runoff of existing runoff rates. What we said is, okay, let's try and achieve the best that we can for the more frequent storm events. So for anything of a 30-year or below storm event, we're actually reducing it to 1 litre per second, which is quite significant. And we're reducing it from for the 100 plus climate change, there's a 50% reduction. So effectively, once it hits a certain level, then it's uncontrolled flow into the sewer, but over the overflow. But overall, that's over a 50% reduction in runoff rates from the site. So construction. You can see here people trying to construct this wiggly wall, which was a lot of fun. Um, this was it. Now, and I put here brackets pre-planting. 2 days ago I was out there and it's pre-planting. And frantically, about 2 hours ago, Kevin turned up having been to site this morning with it being planted, and I've got the photos to show it, so don't worry, Sue. I know you've seen these too many times now, but what you'll see here is main bioretention basin on your left-hand side there. On the top right is the new feature to take water off the at the school entrance off the roof and down this. I don't know how you describe it.
Steel rope helix.
I couldn't have said it better myself. We've also got a bridge linking from the school across the basin to the entrance to the park, and rather than the overhead features that we initially had designed, unfortunately they were designed out on the basis of potential collisions with vehicles, which was something that we maybe will disagree with, but they're now brought across on the surface the majority of the time, and you'll see there's little letterboxes there. It's quite interesting actually now when we've seen it rain. The side with the permeable paving, it's very slow. This is obvious, but it's very slow to actually get to the basin, whereas the sheet flow off the roof, and it's funny how the left-hand side of the basin fills up a lot quicker than the right-hand side, but they both, there's hardly any water in it, within a few hours after the rainfall event. It was amusing hearing the public commenting on that exact thing. So here are my before and after photos, and I do apologise because actually I haven't got the planting in there, so there in certain instances it looks less green than the beginning. So I've tried to get the right perspective as well. This is looking from sort of Bloemfontein Road down towards the White City Estate. We now have a nice bioretention basin with its wiggly wall going through and various trees. We've actually, I think, 3,500 plants being planted at the minute, which is something insane, really. And on the bottom you'll see here, this is looking in the same direction, but just bringing in some of the permeable paving aspects of it. This is looking back towards the school on your left-hand side and the entrance to the park. See, I'm going to go quickly onto these photos that have just come in. So I think this shows the right-hand side photo shows it quite well. So you can see part of the basin's been planted and part of it hasn't, and just the degree of difference that the planting makes. You see here the overhead features, bringing it down, using Corten and stainless steel to bring the water down from the roof, but I think that sort of does it justice, really. Now, obviously, the planting is still going ahead as we speak, but I think you can see there's quite a degree of change into it. It's certainly adding to it. Quickly, I will speak about... We are honorifically naming it Bridget Joyce Square. This is after a resident of the area who died last year, unfortunately. But she spent 50 years working with children in the borough, and it was put forward by local associations to honorifically name it after her. We have a series of signs around, so 3 signs in total, explaining what the project achieves and what is going on below the ground and why certain plants have been selected. And these are just a couple of the responses that we received during the consultation. And frankly, I think when you get a quote like it, it's particularly important to note how responsive the scheme is to the needs of the children, and you think you've done your jobs. I will just put these up. I put here keeping abreast of potential opportunities. That's a case of actually keeping abreast internally within the organisation. So I'm just trying to make sure that if there is any work going on within the borough, that I'm kind of aware of potential opportunities and they're aware of where I'm looking in terms of flood risk. It's coming across people who say, I've never seen it, witnessed it flooding here before. It's trying to explain to them that actually it's not necessarily about localised flooding. It's quite often about the areas downstream. And I think people do start to get it, but as Ian pointed out, as a river 7 miles away, it's less in their consciousness than their immediate needs there on the street. Materials not included within standard framework rates, that makes it more expensive. if you're doing these sort of schemes, try to use your standard highway materials where possible, and if not, make sure that you're aware of the potential to add those to your framework rates prior to doing the schemes. That's evidently what takes the price up quite often. Planting at ground level, I particularly point out this at Kenmore Gardens, you have the potential for it to get kicked over and wrecked. And as long as you've got that in your mind when designing it, quite often your colleagues will try and put raised planters in because they're a lot easier to maintain and there's less potential damage. But obviously, for a SUD's point of view, we quite like them at ground level, and that comes as a potential issue. Maintenance. Just have it at the forefront of your mind throughout when planning these schemes. And as Mark and Nicola spoke about, they started out thinking about maintenance, and it's meant there's no additional maintenance cost. It's really important we do that.
Thank you very much.